I'm not a racist. Some of my best friends are black.
What did you call me? I know you can just say what I thought you said.
Did you say you were pregnant? To be honest, I'm not ready to be a father yet.
If I need to beat my child, it's going to happen. I don't care what the courts or the judge says. These streets are not going to get my kids.
Why does my community have yellow tape guns and murders?
Why can't I find a good man? I'm tired of being by myself.
Is there anything wrong with me being a white woman dating black men?
For so long, our families, communities, cities, and country as a whole have been plagued with so many unresolved issues that don't allow us to grow as a nation or as individuals. In order for us as human beings to develop, nurture, and cultivate better relationships with one another, we must discuss and resolve issues that have plagued our minds for oh so long. What's on the Menu has designed its appetizing menu to feed blacks, whites, Latinos, Asians, ages 8 through 80, information in a truly open and honest dialogue of the toughest issues we face as individuals daily. Our host, Tracy Lithcutt, with selected panelists, will discuss issues that people want to talk about, but for some strange reason don't care to do so publicly. If you're looking for a politically correct program, well, I tell you, you have come to the wrong place. Who wants to deal with more problems without hearing solutions? Who will ask the questions so many of us want to ask without hesitation? Who will speak for me when no one?
One Theater and ART's Oberyn is Wig Out. Welcome. to the premiere edition of What's on the Menu. And we have our host, Mr. Tracy Lithcutt, and his co-host, Mr. Jaymes Leveque.
Today we are going to discuss the N-word. The N-word? Is that the discussion you really want to have? Yeah, right. Nigger, and one more nigger for you. That's right, I dare to say it in public. I believe people want to say the word nigger. People say they have never used the word nigger. The word nigger is used in urban communities, rural communities, and suburbia. It's used by the poor, middle class, and the affluent. It's used in today's music and movies. It's used by all cultural and racial backgrounds, but it seems as though it only really matters when used by blacks and whites. It's used by the young, it's used by the old. And to be honest, the older you are, the more you've probably used the word nigger. The word nigger is used in the streets and in the prisons. It's used in the boardrooms. It's used on the playing fields and courts all over the world. Especially when you lose the game, the word nigger is flying all over the place. The word nigger has many definitions. It means something different to many folks. How does the word nigger make you feel? Have you ever used the word nigger? Should I care what anyone thinks if I say the word nigger? Do you feel comfortable saying the word nigger behind closed doors? Do you use the word nigger in front of your child? Do you call your child a nigger? Today we will tackle and dissect the word nigger like never seen before. In a minute, you will hear and meet from some of Boston's movers and shakers. Once again, my name is Tracy Lithcutt, and to my right, my man, co-host, Jaymes J. Jizzy Leveque.
Trey, how's it going? Trey Ocho, we feeling good today. We have some wonderful guests in the building right now. We're ready to make history, baby. Let's get it.
Let's keep it moving, Jay. I just want to say, panelists, it's great to have you here. This is what I consider star power, not just the athletes and the actors. Community star power is what we have today. Brother Randy, I need a favor from you, though. Well, we need, because I noticed you got the brothers from the nation looking good.
Yes, sir.
Here at the station. We do have one white panelist on here today. we have to pardon him and let him use the word nigga. I don't want to make sure when he leaves here that something doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, as long as it's used appropriately.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure.
We're going to get to what's appropriate in a minute.
Okay. Jamie, you've been pardoned. One thing I see is I think everybody here on the panel said that they've used the word before, but let's really get into this discussion. Robert Lewis, my man, I know this because we grew up together. In the 60s, your family, you were the first black family to move into East Boston housing developments during and before desegregation of schools in Boston. How did it feel hearing the word nigger being yelled at you, your brothers, your sister, your mother? How did it shape your present, your past, as well as your present?
First of all, Tracy, thank you, man, for just being on here today. When I start thinking back about when you're the first, but not just being the first, you're the only. So when you have all these young dudes calling you nigger, you didn't have anybody in the background to go and check in with some of your boys because they weren't there until years later. It almost became the thing that you got up there and you were fighting every day. I remember my father would tell me, if you just come home again and you're not just doing what you needed to do, then you'd be in trouble. But it was until young brothers started moving into Maverick Street Housing Project that we felt we had a little strength to go back and combat that. But man, I'm gonna turn around and tell you, man, like it was used like it was just the norm and it was the average thing being used. But here's the funniest thing. They knew as we got older, if they kept it up and we didn't play sports, then they knew they weren't gonna win.
Sure.
So all of a sudden the change for some of them had more to do with sports than it had to do with being and doing the right thing.
Let me add this as well, because I know your brothers, your sisters, your mother, none of the people in your family are the type that just take things lightly. How did your mother deal with that?
Oh, my mother was out there doing what she had to do. My mother was out there organizing, talking to folks. My mother was out there once in a while. See, my mom had me at 16. So my mom was that young mom out there like banging and doing what she needed to do. But what she also did, Tracy, is made sure that we weren't going to get in trouble.
Sure.
Because as she said, she didn't want us locked up or anything.
Sure.
But that was hard, man, because after we were the first, there wasn't another black family for about 4 or 5 years before we actually had somebody in Maverick that looked like us.
Wow, that had to be difficult, and it is something. I'm curious, Brother Randy, I want to ask you a question. A friend of mine, a middle-aged woman that grew up in the 50s and 60s, said to me that the word wasn't negative, and it was just used in general conversation years ago. and which is kind of what is being done now as well. Is it appropriate to use that word in general conversation? And exactly what does that mean?
Well, I would start off by saying, and first of all, thank you, Tracy, for having me on this show. It's an honor for me to be here, and I'm happy and eager to engage in this conversation.
Thank you, black man.
The Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us that the black man is the original man. Today, archaeologists, astrologists, geneticists, historians, they all will agree that the black man is in fact the original man, that the oldest bones ever found were in Africa. And they trace all humanity back to Africa. So the black man being the original man, now we take it to the scriptures, and God said he created man in his image and after his own likeness. So we were created in the image and the likeness of God. So we are not niggas. So we should never refer to ourselves in that derogatory term, especially as a term of endearment. So I don't think that it's ever appropriate to use that term in a casual sense, or taking it loosely, or it being an acceptable term. The fact that we use it denotes the fact that we have been robbed of the knowledge of ourselves, and that we are ignorant to who we really are. And so for us to take a term, a name that was used to degrade us, to justify enslaving us, to justify lynching us, to use that now and to try to use it as a term of endearment is really just indicative of the fact that we still lack a lot of knowledge of our history and of really who we are as a people.
Did I tell you we're gonna have star power today or what? I knew you could not go with that word go wrong with having a nation on this show. Jamie McDonald, my man Jamie, I gotta ask you a question. I catch the train to go to work every day. And I'm on the train, whether I'm going or coming back home, and the young people are on the train. And the word nigga is just flying all over the place. Folks are looking at those kids saying that word in a very aggressive manner. Have you ever been in that situation? And how do you feel when you hear that word being thrown about like that? And once again, you're our expert white panelist today.
I'm acutely uncomfortable when it's used. Most in the worst way in front of older black people, because I'm 60 and I don't consider myself old, so I'm basically talking about people who are towards 70 or older, because it's a dim historical memory for in our culture. The further we get away, not just from the Civil War, but from the civil rights. And they tell themselves that if they refrain personally from saying nigger, they couldn't possibly be racist, which is absurd. So when the bar is set that low, and nigger becomes used in a widespread way and casually, it kind of encourages, in the Trump era, whites to not really face the facts of the legacy of slavery and how profoundly damaging it has been, not just to blacks as a group, but to our nation.
Sure. Let me ask you a follow-up question there, Jamie. Do we as adults have a responsibility to correct those young people when we see them doing that publicly? And do you feel comfortable addressing them on the train or in public when they do that?
Well, the one time I was on a train and told anyone to pipe down, it was New Year's Eve, and I ended up standing on top of my seat with a beer bottle holding people back. So I would not say anything to young men who were using it. But that presupposes that they're Latino or black. If they're white, maybe I would say something. Sure. I just, white punks saying nigger angers me. Now, one thing I was thinking.
If you saw young folks, and I'd have to say, for me, it's very frustrating, and I'd have to say I consider that very inappropriate. How would you deal with that situation, or how would you recommend folks that are out there listening to deal with that situation?
Well, kind of what James was saying earlier. You know, it honestly, it depends on who's saying it. You know, being a millennial in my age bracket, you know, people, you hear it every day on the trains, on the buses, in public, library. No matter where you're at, you're gonna hear it. People saying it. You got Hispanics calling each other niggas. You got Asians calling each other's niggas. You got niggas calling each other niggas. You know, it gets to a point where, you know, like, you're gonna get mad every day. Like, you know, you're gonna change your way of life. And like, if it was white, you know, guys saying it loosely, and like that to me is going to be a little more derogatory. It's like, it's kind of intentional. Sure. It's like, you know, when you got a group of white males saying the word nigger loosely in public when they surrounded by, you know, other cultures, especially in Boston, you know, we're so diverse here. You know, you can't help but go anywhere but bump into some nationality, creed, or whatever. Sure. You know, so, you know, when people are doing it like that, you know, can't help it, you know, it can start a fight.
Sure. It's something, too. I actually asked a white woman that I work with, how would she feel if I used that word in a general conversation? She surprised me. She said, I'd feel sorry for you for using that word. And it made me really think, wow, I got to be comfortable and start questioning what I say. Dean, I want to ask you a question. You're in the theater. You know, the theater is always held in a different perspective than the rest of the general public. You live in a different world. Most folks don't understand what it's like to be in that world. Is it insulting to use that word in a general conversation?
I think it's I don't know if I want to get into the conversation too much about yes or no. Is it insulting or is it not insulting? However, I do believe that we have to understand that language carries history. We have to understand that language carries a weight, and we have to acknowledge that history. So when we use it in the conversation in the theater, and I'm not going to use it today in this room because my public face, I'm always concerned about how am I viewed when I'm speaking. So in the privacy of my home, I might use it, but and with my friends, I might use it. But out in public, that's not what it's about. So being mindful about that and always being conscious about how you're viewed, how you're seen.
Okay. You know, I want to ask the panel a question. Does the word nigga only have an impact when it's used by black or white people? Does it have the same impact if it's used by a Latino or an Asian? The floor is open.
I mean, when an Asian or Latino say it, you know, I mean, I consider them part of the ethnic culture anyway. So, you know, we've all gone through our own trials and tribulations throughout the history. I'm not so much offended by it, to be honest, when I see another person, like, especially Hispanic. Maybe Asian, I might feel uncomfortable, you know, but to be honest, we're in a new day and age, you know. What are you going to do about it?
I think we got to acknowledge that the word isn't necessarily a black word or a white word. It's an American word. It was created by America to subjugate. So to deny people the right to say it is foolish. It's contradictory. No one should be saying it, and we have to understand that. And we have to understand that that's a part of the history.
Well, you know, let me ask Brother Randy this question: if a white person used the word nigger towards a black individual, does it automatically make them a racist? I myself personally don't believe so. I want to hear what you think about that, Brother Randy.
A racist is prejudice plus power, and there's a lot of white people that may use the word nigger that don't have any power.
That's true.
Right? So they're part of a system, an overall system of white supremacy that those that may not have power may be in the system and benefit from the system. But I think that, you know, it's irrelevant, you know, whether they have power or whether we want to throw the label racist on them or not. And going back to the previous question, does the word have the same impact if it's used by other people? You know, I would like to agree with my brother. It's a word that America created, and any of us that use it, it just highlights the sad state of affairs that we're in America. And as a person, as a black man, when I hear people use it, you know, I get very offended at not necessarily them, like if I hear Asians using it or Latinos using it, it's a reminder of how far we've gone. Where here's a word that can be used and be used in a way that seems to be acceptable by others with no regard. Let me just say this, when we look at, no one would ever use racial slurs with regards to Jewish people. Michael Jackson had to take out a whole album because he said one thing in there about, kike me, something that was offensive to Jews. They made him take the whole album off the shelf, right? But rappers and everybody can say they could say nigga this and that, and it's no problem. But so it's offensive that it's allowed to be used, and that is people don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
Man, Brother Randy, I'm sorry to cut you off, but our online is going crazy right now. There's a couple questions that people want to ask. Jamie, this goes out to you. This person says...
where are they calling from, Jay?
They're actually calling from Chicago. And they want to know, do you think white people are upset because we took a word that was basically used to harm us, and we kind of switched it around and as a term of endearment? So do you think white people is upset over that, or do you think, I'm guessing, it's going out to you because you're the token white guy in the room, okay, and that they just want you to, answer the question. So what do you think about that, sir?
I'm not sure that white people are catching the nuances of its use and really understanding. It's more sophisticated whites. Larry David had that joke going on Curb Your Enthusiasm with his black tenant buddy who would call him my nigger, and he would say, "Yo, you're my nigger," But
it's all right, Jamie. You're turning red, but it's all right.
But that's a sophisticated point of view. My concern about the word nigger is this: urban populations are sophisticated enough to hear it and to understand social context and what it means. My concern is how it plays in white America and the boondocks. Because I tell you what I think, the meaning of the Trump electoral victory seems to be that a lot of racism that was driven underground and hidden has just, percolated up. And almost in a tsunami of racial hatred. A black or Hispanic wanders into a Starbucks to order coffee, and all of a sudden is getting a tirade.
Okay, I want to mention to folks too out there listening, we also have a phone line that you can call into Boston Praise Radio. Please call 617-282-0685 or 617-282-7794 or 617-265-2679. Go ahead, Jay. Do your thing.
Oh man, we got a caller right now. But right now, this question is actually out of New York, and it's towards Brother Randy. What do you think our people of color, can do to eliminate that word? Or what is it? Can we use another word, another term of endearment, or another word that we can possibly use?
Absolutely. There's plenty of words. We can call each other brothers, right? We can call each other's God. Peace, God. How you doing, God?
Absolutely.
How you doing, King? Right? Use a word that actually elevates us and empowers us and leads us in a path of acquiring more knowledge. If I say to you, peace, God, and you're not accustomed to that terminology, your question is, well, why did he call me God, right? And then that may spark a conversation, and I'll tell you, the scripture says that we are all God's children of the Most High God. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, yes, we do need to use other words, and it starts with educating ourselves.
Absolutely. Right now, we have a caller, Trey. I mean, this is going heavy right now. We actually got a caller. Caller, come on in. We want to welcome you to call in. What you got for us?
Good evening, brothers and sisters. My name is Eric. I'm a lifelong resident of Boston. Welcome to the BPR family.
Eric, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm glad you guys are having this conversation because I was on the bus Ruggles the other day, and I sat in the back with a bunch of my brothers. They're younger generation millennials, and they started their conversation, and every other word was nigger. So I started to count how many times they said it in their conversations. from Ruggles to Dudley Station 146 times.
Oh, you must have really enjoyed that ride. That must have been a wonderful ride to Ruggles, huh?
I brought it to their attention, and they said, well, we're saying it with the A, not the ER, and it's a term of endearment. So I'm going to propose this question to your panel there, and then I'm going to hang up and listen. But does the spelling of the word change its meaning?
Tommy, what do you think about that, Tommy?
I'm surprised it was just that many times, to be honest. No, but I mean, this is a touchy subject. You know, the ER, the AZ, you know, however it goes, you know, it's still the same word, no matter how we use it. You know, people like to hide it and mask it with the A, but you understand, these people are talking to each other. They're talking to each other in that frame of reference, you know. No matter what word they use, whether it's a more positive word, it's still in their circle. It's the term that they're using as endearing. My brother, you know, the same words we use. You know, in hip hop, you know, we use this as a curve every day. You know, you have for every Eminem, you know, Eminem's probably the most successful rapper in history, right? And he's, from a lot of people, known to be one of the best MCs ever, you know, and he's never used the word. And he's created this illustrious career off of never using the word. Now, then you have Eminem, sign somebody like 50 Cent. Now, we all know 50 Cent uses it every chance he gets, you know, and he's just as successful. You know, it's like apples and oranges, you know. You got Eminem on one hand, you got 50 Cent on the other. He's black, he uses it. He's successful off of it. He's white, he doesn't use it. He's successful off of it. You know, it's all about your audience, how they accept it, the people around you. For the guy that's on the bus, you know, I apologize for those guys, but you know, you have to understand. I'm surprised they only said it to you like that. To be honest,
well,
with you.
let me move forward here because this show would not be possible without the sponsors from this city that supported us. Good friends of mine. Gloria, who do we have?
Well, our sponsors are Cameron Zahidi from Urbanica, Attorney Eddie Jenkins, George Kramer, Leo Pipal, Terrell Calloway, all from Boston. And then we have Better Belly Pastry out of Chicago, Illinois, The Shop T-Shirt Graphics, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Apon Concept Stage Lighting and Productions out of Miami, Florida, Jay Allen Meal Prep, he's a personal chef out of Burlington, Vermont, Jay Rockwell, Sound Mixing Studio out of Boston, Sweet Embers, Baked Sweet Treats, and that's out of Boston too. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much, sponsors. We really appreciate everything that you do for us and that you will continue to do. And please visit our website, www.whatsonthemenuboston.com. But let me continue this conversation. The movie Django with Quentin Tarantino and Samuel L. Jackson. Dick Gregory wrote 2 books, Nigger and Up From Nigger, and stated every time the word was used, it was assisted in promoting his book. Fred Williamson had 2 movies, Nigger Charlie and Boss Nigger. My question is, do academics, do entertainers, do rappers, does the music industry have free reign at using it, comedians as well? Do they have free reign at using a word without any repercussions? Dean, what do you think?
Yes.
That's simple.
We can't. The biggest thing American does is deny the history of language, of what we do as a people, as a nation. Therefore, in order to keep those memories alive, we have to acknowledge the true history. It was something that was said. We can't be upset that that is something that we did. I think people are most upset that it's a reflection of themselves and their history, and that's hard to stomach.
I hear that one. I like that. Chime in, folks.
But Trace, here's the thing I'm struggling with. Why is it a term of endearment?
Yeah.
So there's something that's off with that. Every year we take our young brothers and we go down south to travel for sports. One of the first things we have to let them know is when we go into hotels and everything, you know, you just can't be saying things because down south, every time a young brother would say, nigger this, nigger that, all the old folks in the hotel and everyone worked there would come out and call them out because they're also talking about their struggle and what they've gone through. But it's one of the few times our young brothers get a history lesson, right, on, you know, what it has done in terms of all negative connotations, all put down, all that we're less than. And Brother Randy, I love what you're saying, because if we don't uplift, because there is a history, but the history isn't good history. It isn't saying, you a nigga, that means you special. See,
Right.
they call other folks business leaders success. And what we can't do is get caught up in this even thing, a term of endearment.
Right.
What we have to do is shift this narrative that our young brothers and sisters are exceptional.
Well, let me just say
Yeah,
about
go ahead.
shifting that narrative. My girlfriend and I were watching TV the other night. There's a new series on called The Last OG with Tracy Morgan. I'm sitting there watching it, and I was like, oh, my goodness. No, she didn't. She said, nigga, no, you didn't come back here to see me. This was on TV nowadays. All right, so I don't know about the word being forgotten,
Right.
but it was right out there in front of us. It shocked me. So it looks like the word is getting used more than ever, and I'm going to throw this other piece into it. It's used more by black folks than it's used by anybody else. So how do we get offended when someone else uses the word and we use it more than anybody else?
Well, let me chime in on that. See, I think that a nigga is as a nigga does, right? So you asked earlier, is there an appropriate time? I guess that's the overall title. I think it's appropriate to use the word as an adjective, right? What is a nigga? Nigga is what I started off by quoting Bible and talking about how God made man in his image. God made man, the white man made nigga. And what he did in making a nigga is rob us of our name, language, culture, God, history, religion, identity, enslave us, and actually dehumanize us so that he can use us for chattel slavery. He reduced us to an animal stage. So that's what a nigga is. A nigga is the white man's Frankenstein, right? And so when we go back, when you talk about the movie The Django, I think that the way it was used in Django, that's appropriate because it was used with vitriol. It was used, they were saying that not as a term of endearment. Right. When they said nigga, they meant it. They meant they was dehumanizing them. Right. And so for artistic quality, yeah, I'm not going to be mad at the movie if you're using it as an adjective in the proper historical context. You know, it is what it is. We're not going to erase the word or try to sanitize the word and act like that history did not exist. And so, you know, a nigga is as a nigga does, but the problem is that when we try to take that, right, and we want to use it as a term of endearment, again, is indicative of the fact that, you know, we are just lowering ourselves and really accepting this thing, and it's a mockery. It really is. We should never use it as a term of endearment. I like what my brother said again, that really we shouldn't use it even to address each other, right, when we're in front of white folks. Mm-hmm. Like, you know what I'm saying? We should never do that, right? Because other folks are sitting around looking at us, and they, even though we may not know the history, they know the history.
Black folks, did you hear what Minister Randy said to us? We have got to get off this word and move forward. I'm consistently hearing this from the panel, but I want to hear from the millennials who really have thought that they've taken the power out of the word nigga and changed it into something positive. But you don't have to answer that question, Dean or Tommy. Go with what the discussion. Let's continue what we're discussing right now. Anything that you want to answer regarding that?
I think, I am going to address your question a little bit. We have to understand that black culture, black art has often taken things that have been bitter and made them into positives. When we think about the history of blues music, history of jazz, our culture is one that, history of our food, taking these things that are not healthy for us and turning them into positives, and on positives with an air quotation mark. We really have to think about why, as a society of people, we hold on to these histories and feel the need to turn this colonial mindset into a modern day victory. And I think it's important to note that and ask that question: why? Why are we still in that place? What are we doing that is holding ourselves back from proper liberation?
I wish I had that answer too.
Is it holding ourselves back or pushing ourselves forward? You know, I'm glad you used the show Django as an example of it. You know, it seems like people tend to perceive that movie from the outside, as far as they focus on the white people calling the man nigger. Nobody ever comments on how, all right, I'll take a scene from the movie. You know,
are you gonna do it in the voice as well?
No, not the voice. I thought you had those type of skills. Maybe another show. But now, like for instance, like, you know, he's riding in on a horse, right? He's riding on a horse. And all the white people look at him, right? He's like, yo, what's wrong with everybody's face? Everybody's like, that's a nigga on a horse. And then, you know, Jamie Foxx is like, you know, the guy asked him, you know, why's everybody looking at you? He's like, yeah, they ain't never seen a nigga on a horse before. You know, that was like the pivotal scene of him turning something, them looking at him, knowing he's going into a hostile environment, especially in a time that's being deemed as, you know, the most racist time. Black people getting killed, attacked by dogs, hung, the whole nine. And he took that and he acted his role, you know, and to get his own victory, his own goal. You know, if we focus too much on people offending us, we're gonna cut our own foot off and stop our own progress. You know, by
imagine though. So
go ahead.
Imagine if that line though said they ain't never seen a man on a horse. The significance of that then.
But at the time,
in comparison,
I get it, but I definitely get that. But we all know we can't take the history away from what's going on. You know, the slavery, the term to derogatory. Like, I agree with Brother Randy 100%. I've just started adapting the philosophy of being an indigenous man, you know, being a natural man of this, you know, of this planet, you know. But the history, based on what we were subject to, you cannot forget that.
Absolutely.
Can I just say that this discussion is getting so deep that Brother Randy done flipped my man the rapper into an indigenous man. He's indigenous all of a sudden. He ain't never said that to me before, Brother Randy.
Man.
I'm sorry, Minister. But I want to go back to this though. I know for myself, I don't know, years ago when we used to call each other names, you know, I grew up during desegregation of schools. The worst thing you could say to a white person back then was maybe honky or white boy. Right? I've said that word many a times, but I am nowhere near a racist.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I want to go back to this again. Does it automatically make a white person a racist if they say that word? Does it not determine who that person is that said the word that determines whether or not they're racist or not?
I think so.
That's it.
Well, I would say again, context matters, right? The context matters. It matters what is the context in which that person is using it and what's their intent, right? And so, you know, I think that, you know, we've made it socially acceptable, even though I don't think it should be made socially acceptable, right? So, you know, like someone was mentioning earlier, a comedian that says, you know, I got a lot of black friends and they use it and I use it with them, and so it's cool. You know, if that's their understanding, I don't think that person is necessarily being a racist. Another black person gave them license to use it as a term of endearment. You know, but I'll say this, right? I think for us, we should be more concerned, not necessarily with the fact that the word is being used, but the conditions that precipitate the word being used, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that we're using this word means that the educational system has failed us, right? The social system has failed us completely, right? You know,
Let me just jump in there. What about the parents, though? Have the black parents, do they have a responsibility to make sure that when their children are not just at home, but when they leave that house, that they're not acting the way that word is said?
You have a whole generation that has grown up now, where a lot of parents call their own children's niggas, right? Because it's like now it's acceptable, and this is what I mean by, you know, it's a sign that the educational system, right, and the whole social system is out of whack. No self-respecting Jew would allow you to come up to them and say, hey, what's up, my kike? You know, no Hispanic is going to allow you or tolerate you to come up, hey, what's up, spick? You know what I'm saying? We're the only race of people that have taken a word that has been used to oppress us and dehumanize us and try to empower it. You know, and I understand, you know, I consider myself a young man. I come from the hip hop generation myself, you know, and so I understand what brothers are coming from, trying to say we're taking the power from the word, but, you know, it's just not true. You know, it's not true. We're not taking the power from the word, because in the eyes of civilized people, we look crazy as hell using that word.
Hey, so right now, our line's just going crazy right now. This topic is going real heavy, and so right now there's a question for actually Robert Lewis, and it says, Robert Lewis, your family resided in East Boston, and this is actually coming from a question from Boston. So your family resided in East Boston. What were some of the trials and tribulations that you experienced in your youth coming up?
1976, being firebombed.
Being firebombed.
Yeah. You know, group of white boys came over, threw a Molotov cocktail bomb, blew up my house. 22 black families were firebombed out of East Boston.
Wow.
And while they were standing there, they were calling us niggas. And this wasn't folks being bussed in. this was 22 families that grew up in the project in East Boston. So this is what we were dealing with every single day. Nigger, not wanting you there, except on the football field, on the basketball court, because if you could play, then they would say, not you, but them. Like, you're not a nigger, but them. But if we didn't play sports or do that other stuff, that was it. So yeah, man, it was every day, constant, and it just, in a weird way, became part of just your upbringing.
But I'm going to say something about that. It's apparent that your mother, who I knew very well, God bless her soul, she raised you well. She raised you well because you definitely have done well, and that word doesn't seem to be a word that has affected you at all.
Yeah, Trace, but here's the thing, right? Because we being real.
Right.
See, because there's a public image of what you do. Folks don't know what we did when my mom was at home. Folks don't know when we got together and we had to do what we had to do. Because if we didn't do that, we couldn't have protected ourselves. So, man, it was, I'm not going to lie to you, man. It's like that still lurks because 22 black families being firebombed because of the color of our skin, and somebody had the right to say we don't want no niggers here, and the community didn't, like, be outraged. Now, I still carry that.
Hey, this next question actually goes to our token white guy. I'm sorry, Jamie, but it's asking you, do you think white people have graduated from their way of thinking? This is actually from a question from actually in New York City, Brooklyn. And they're asking, do you think white people have graduated from their thinking? Because I think a lot of the times, where if I can elaborate a little bit on what this person is actually trying to say, is that a lot of time white folks have gotten into, they actually have to kind of like defend what their ancestors had done, and they don't really have that mindset because they actually grew up in the hip hop era. You know, they in the clubs. So what do you think about that? They're in the clubs with whites, blacks, all different nationalities. So do you think white folks have graduated from that way of thinking?
In my lifetime, there's been a regression, if anything, in terms of white understanding of the black experience.
Got it.
And a lot of it is denial. They don't want to know.
Right.
And they're taking refuge because the implications of really recognizing how we have systematically, psychologically damaged black people is to accept responsibility for that and to try to atone for it. And we're not willing to put the tax dollars there. So it's a whole lot easier to function in denial because then you don't have to do anything about it. So that's why they're wanting to set the hurdle so low as to, I don't say nigger, I couldn't possibly be a racist.
Sure. You know, one thing I want to say, too, you know, I'm not the one that's going to blame anybody else for anything else in my prop that I do or for that blacks do. I think it's responsibility of us to start taking control. As much as we do use it, it's time for us to leave it alone. I wish we had another hour to do this, but our panelists, we have 5 more minutes for you guys to wrap it up. So, Robert Lewis, what do you think? Is it appropriate to use the word nigger, or any way that you like to wrap it up?
No, I don't do it like young folks because it's all negative connotation. But I do say, Trace, a couple of things. Our young folks need to be educated. Our young folks need to know that, like, they can walk in any boardroom downtown, you know, that I don't want our young brothers having the code switch of who they are. Our thing is that I just think we got to love each other and know that we're bigger and better than this, and don't let the power and the privilege of somebody's history determine. And the last thing I'll say, Trump ain't no excuse. Folks were doing this before Trump.
Already.
So that's my only thing is, like, what Trump is almost in a weird way do is just give folks more freedom just to be as crazy as they want to be.
Robert Lewis, thank you very much. Brother Randy, what do you think? Close this up for me.
Words have power. You know, and for our young people coming up, I remember in hip hop, we saying in hip hop culture, but I remember when hip hop culture, we didn't use the word nigga. When I grew up in hip hop, you know, the brothers were poor righteous teachers. You know, they were brand Nubian, they were X-Clan. You know what I'm saying? There was Queen Latifahs. We refer to our sisters as queens. We refer to our brothers as gods. It was at a certain time where they started to push this intellectual, this gang culture, this gangster mentality, and it was for a reason. And so it wasn't always the case, and it doesn't have to be the case. And even though we want to try to take the word and use it as a term of endearment, if you want to really be endearing, why not call your brother a king? Why not call him a God?
Yes, sir.
Why not just call him brother?
My man.
Right? And if you, and this is how because I used it, I came up in that, and when I came into the Nation of Islam, I had to stop using it, and so whenever you would use the word, just replace it with the word brother, and we can do away with that.
I appreciate that. Jamie McDonald, what do you have to say for me, my brother? Because you are my brother
Okay,
too.
we've been talking about an ugly word, and I want to end on a little bit of beauty. What black people have to recognize, and white people, is that black culture has contributed more to American English in the last 100 years. Most of the creativity and the expansion of vocabulary is coming out of the black community. Now, that's a power for good or a power for bad. But I'm as equally disturbed by the indiscriminate use of hoe and bitch as I am for nigger.
Okay, there's a whole lot of words out there. Let's stick to this one we're talking about today now. Let's stick to one now. That's another show.
With that creativity that comes out of the black community, there should be some responsibility too. And when ugly words, which may be used narrowly, start getting exaggerated and used like in general application, it can be a bad thing.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for being here, brother. Tommy, what you got for me, Tommy?
Man, I'm going to agree again with the whole education. It all begins with the education. We need to put our responsibilities on ourselves to educate ourselves, and dig deep about the meaning of the word. As far as music goes, hip-hop is going to be hip-hop. Back in the day when it was Brand Nubian and, the Poor Righteous Teachers, it was a different time as well. The communities changed, drugs came in, that changed a lot of things, and a lot of these rappers, poets, are just reflecting what they're seeing, in the streets that they're growing up in, So as far as, I don't think people should use it, but at the same time, I don't tend to get offended by it either. I kind of grew a hippo skin to it,
My man, Tommy, I greatly appreciate you, my brother. Dean, I keep wanting to say your other name. Dean, the actor name, give it to me. What you got that wrap this up, Dean?
What I'm going to do is quote James Baldwin. He wrote this, and I believe it sums up a lot of this well. I prefer to believe that since a society is created by men, it can be remade by men. The price for this transformation is high. White people will have to ask themselves precisely why they found a necessity to invent the nigger. For the nigger is a white invention, and white people invented him out of the terrible necessities of their own. And every white citizen of this country will have to accept the fact that he is not innocent.
Very cool.
Let me just say this. When I talk to you about star power, this is what I'm talking about. This is star power coming at you, talking about a topic that we all need to deal with. I haven't heard enough from my man Jay. Jay, what do you have to say about this word?
Man, this word nigga is a word that really,
it really hits you harder too, because you say it real slow, nigga, and you say it slow.
This is something that it's a word that it's a touchy subject. It's a touchy subject where I believe like a lot of times white folks brought up the word nigga in a it was really used to really hurt some people, but we actually took it and we flipped it on them, in which we usually do. So I don't know. I don't know what to say, because Brother Randy really opened up my mind towards a lot of different things, different perspective on that word.
So now we have the rest of our production team. As you know, the name of our show is What's on the Menu. So we try to be a little bit slick here and say this part of the segment is called The Dessert, from our production team that's worked so hard on this production today. Cheryl, Gloria, Gail, what do you think? What about this topic? How did folks address this today? What do you think about it?
First, I'd like to preface with I believe in freedom of speech. So when people talk on the bus or use the N-word in public, I ignore it. But growing up in the '60s as a biracial girl in a predominantly ghetto type area, I was called cracker by white people and nigger lover by black people.
You was in the middle of the sandwich, huh? You just right in the middle.
I just got it from both ends, and I relate the word nigger to a very hateful term. It's very hateful. I personally don't like to use it. If I use it, it's a joking way, not in public, but amongst people that know me. I personally find it to be a very offensive word, and as the minister Randy said, it's a very hateful type term. I was watching Monster Ball the other night, where the old white gentleman said, he wanted to get a taste of nigger juice. I mean, that's terrible. I mean, or I want to split dark oak. I mean, it's really
I
offensive
wonder
to
what
me.
that was. I'm not sure what that is. Is that Kool-Aid? I'm not sure what that is. But yeah, what do you have to say about this?
Again, it's one of those words. It is the word, and it's painful. Having been an educator for most of my life, my whole thing would be we have to educate. We have to educate our young people to change the way they think. In terms of that, we are better than niggers will ever be. And it's the type of thing that if you don't really, and you're not consciously aware of who you are and where you come from, and your greatness and your power, because I am that queen, I am that king, I am that everything but a nigger. And I would choose very wisely, and I want young people to be able to choose very wisely what it is they need to say, how they need to live their lives, and it's all in presentation. So let's present ourselves to be our best self, and your best self, by no long shot, will it be a nigger.
Thank you. Ooh, that was hot. Our newest producer, what do you think, Gloria?
Well, I encourage everyone to go online to Webster Merriman Dictionary and look and see what the definition is. We have been misguided to think it was an ignorant person, and Webster will deny that fact. They never listed it as that. It's always, most recently, I think they were really in a place where they had to list it, like the brother Randy said. No, I think it was actually Jamie said it, that we have contributed to the English language. And so that's where we are. Now, if you look at I have a dictionary in my hand, and the word nigard, A-R-D, means stingy. Niggerly, petty. So now I'm thinking in terms of the 1800s, where they're trying to shorten down words. They pulled that out and put it for us. Me, I don't use it. If I'm being real rude and crass, I'll say nigger.
I could have sworn you said it to me the other night. I could have sworn you called me. I know the difference.
I love the word nigger. Okay. I don't know if I don't know if I would be really comfortable actually saying the word, to somebody.
Right.
My sisters, we refer to each other as queen, fly girl, all kinds of stuff. That just affirmations to make us feel more beautiful every day.
Okay,
Thank
queen.
you.
Hey, Trey, listen, our phone line is going off the hook. We're going to be able to take one last caller. Caller, what you got for us?
Hello, am I on?
You on, baby.
Get us there quick, brother. Get us there quick. We don't have a lot of time.
Yeah, real quick. This is Jamal Crawford calling, and I had just tuned in, and I just got to say, in this conversation about that word, and everybody acknowledges how offensive it is, and it triggers up trauma. I just have never in my life seen where the general hood rule, where white people are also able to just utter this word so freely, and I'm quite frankly taken aback and offended. So I just think that might be a point to consider while you're having this conversation. Just the optics and the sound of that, it doesn't sit well, and I don't know who gave that pass that today was the day where what normally happens doesn't.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I don't know, but I want to say too, which is another conversation. Hip hop culture has done a lot in a good way, in a negative way at times, and I think that may be a part of it. But right now, we have something special that we highlight every week. Excuse me. It's called the National Spotlight. Jay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, this is the session of our show called the National Spotlight. This feature will give individuals, programs, brands, entrepreneurs the opportunity to showcase what they do. This is where we highlight the creative talents of individuals and programs from across the country. I encourage folks to send in your information to be highlighted on our upcoming broadcast. Please check out our website, www.whatsonthemenuboston.com. So, today on the National Spotlight, we wanted to highlight this organization called the Pink Pistols. I know what you're thinking. What in the world is the Pink Pistols? Well, let your boy Jay Jizzy put you on. Today, we have in our studio the coordinator of the Boston chapter of the Pink Pistols, Aaron Grossman. Aaron, who in the world are the Pink Pistols?
Hey Jay, thanks for having me on. The Pink Pistols are an organization. We advocate self-defense in the queer community, LGBTQ, etc., specifically using firearms. The goal is we teach queers to shoot, and then we teach the world we've done it. ideally that will deter the kind of people who think it's a good idea to go out and gay bash, that they'll have to think, if I want to go and start a fight today, that might end with me getting in trouble too.
So, Aaron, I got a quick question for you. So with everything that's going on with guns in this country, why should the country feel any sentiment for the LGBTQ community to be able to carry guns?
So, as a community, we are at a higher risk than average for violence. That violence tends more often to be for the purpose of doing violence and doing harm, often by groups, and often ending in severe death.
Severe injury and death just because of who we are. So because of that, it's more important that we have these tools available to us to be able to deter violence.
Good. So why do you think the LGBTQ community needs guns and laws to support that?
The short version is firearms are one of the best tools available to a person to defend themselves, partly because the barrier to entry to training is lower than anything else. Martial arts are great. I teach it. I advise people to take it up. But your grandmother can't handle learning martial arts to defend herself. We actually had a guy yesterday who is elderly and wants to be able to carry because he lives in a dangerous neighborhood and can't really handle himself any other way.
Okay. So now, Aaron, why is it necessary for the pink pistols to even exist?
The short version is everybody should be able to protect themselves. We think that that's critically important. And as a targeted community, it's important to give ourselves a safe space to be able to work together to improve our safety and our health as a community.
Got it. Aaron, thank you so much for your time. Can you please provide us with your information for any of our viewers who have questions, comments, or want to know more about the pink pistols?
I'm sorry, Aaron, but we're going to have to do that on our website. We're running out of time at this point. I apologize. This is our first broadcast, but we have to move into our closing statement at this time.
Of course.
So sorry, but thank you for being here, Aaron.
Thank you
I appreciate
for having me.
it. When I think about my personal use of the word nigger, I become very comfortable saying it in many environments. So I thought to myself, if I'm aware enough not to use the word all the time, get a grip on myself and eliminate it altogether from my vocabulary. Do I believe we overreact to the use of the word nigger? I would have to say yes and no. Let's be honest, this word bothers a large group of individuals. So for my personal taste, it's time for me to make a change with the word nigger. If young people use it in public, oh yeah, I'll definitely address it. There are some old timers that use the word daily and it doesn't bother them if they're called a nigger or if the word is used in their conversations. From my experience, street individuals don't care about the usage of the word, but you had better use it in the right way. Educated blacks for the most part find the word offensive, but at times use it in a joking manner. In other words, the jury is still out on the verdict. It's an individual decision. After speaking with many white folks, the word is offensive to them as well. I personally do not feel black people have the right to use the word and other races cannot. How do you criticize another group if we as blacks are the biggest offenders of using the word? I don't know what to think when I hear it in music or film. At times I feel it as though it's a form of artistic expression, reality, and history. I know I don't want my children to use the word, but because it's just strictly offensive. I'm sorry, folks. I'm not going to be able to finish my closing statement because we have to close up. Tune in April 29th, 3 o'clock for our next topic. A man and a woman have sex. The woman gets pregnant. The man doesn't want to have the child. Whose decision is it? Thank you for joining us on our first broadcast.
Fire, ladies and gents.